I think the whole thing is just a confidence trick.
The most important thing we're going to discuss is that Neil Gaiman grew up in a cult. And so that's the premise. Now, why is that important? I think that's important because that shapes his values and that shapes his later actions. It's also important because some of the allegations that we'll go through a little bit in detail later are probably really stuff that potentially at some point allegedly were normal things in his life, unfortunately. And maybe they were things that early in his life he saw on a regular basis. I don't know.
Expression, drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yes.
What does it mean?
It means buying into something because you're listening to what someone has to say and therefore buying in and almost disregarding anything else.
And do you know where it comes from?
I don't. I do not know where it comes from.
People actually say, don't drink the Kool-Aid. But they don't understand where that came from. They have no idea what's behind that.
A girl named Julie Reynolds that was being forced to take it. She was about 13, I guess. And she kept spitting it out. And they were forcing her to take it.
Who, with David Gaiman, a one-time real estate agent, is a spokesman for the school.
We address the being, or the spirit, or the soul, whatever you wish to say.
We've got a little bit of, I don't know if it'll be a treat for you, Neil, or not, but we've actually found a recording of you at the age of 7, believe it or not, and you do sound like a very, very intelligent 7-year-old. You were interviewed for a BBC radio programme, The World at Weekend, because at the time your father worked for the Church of Scientology in East
I remember
Grinstead.
I'd been thrown out of school.
Well, this...
Because my parents were I'd been thrown out of school.
Well, this...
Because my parents were Scientologists.
This is... Have you heard this since this was broadcast?
I haven't.
This is you at the age of 7.
Go for it.
It is an applied philosophy dealing with the study of knowledge. It helps you to handle quite a lot of problems.
But what problems do you have as a little boy that this helps you with?
Only one big problem.
What's that?
My friend Stephen.
Oh, I see. Is he a Scientologist?
Yes.
He is. But I mean, how does this grade that you've got, Problems Release, help you to deal with Stephen?
Well, you know, I've dealt every single problem except Stephen. It's one thing Problems Release can't help me to handle.
So you still fight with Stephen?
It's more of a question he fights with me.
What kind of memories does that bring back?
Actually, what I was amazed by was the accent. Because there is that, mostly because when I was doing the audio recording of Ocean at the End of the Lane, I was having to go to the BBC website and find recordings of Sussex accents. And listening to that, it was like, oh my gosh, I had one. I never knew.
Who was
Just
Stephen?
a little one, but he was the kid at the end of the lane. But the kid who lived in a house just down the road. And he almost crops up in this book.
Really?
There's a memory of a kid who I think I call somebody Kovacs in this book, who was basically based on him, because I went and stayed the night at his house once. And as soon as his mum closed the door, we were in our bunk beds, he pulls out his water pistol and he started firing it at me. And I'm lying there in bed going, somebody's shooting a water pistol. I don't know how to deal with this. It was... But yeah, it's really funny listening to myself.
You said you were thrown out of school?
My parents were Scientologists, and I wasn't allowed in the local school. So that was why the BBC came down and interviewed me.
Keith Graves was the man asking the questions, apparently, so we should give him some credit there. You've made it clear that you are not a Scientologist, but that your family members are, including your sister Lizzie, who is thanked at the back of the book. How tricky a situation is that?
It's not tricky. It's family. You know, families are they're interesting, they're glorious, they drive you nuts, they're families. I don't know anybody who doesn't have one.
Drink the Kool-Aid and don't know where that comes from at all.
No, they don't. They don't mean to offend people, but it really offends the people who survived or survivors, because it kind of connotes this mindlessness, you know, where You just willingly die.
So the real hints of this controversy actually started back probably 5 months ago. Like there was sort of like this hint that Neil Gaiman had used inappropriately his relationship with David Tennant to groom women. But this seems to have been something that was brewing in the UK and hadn't really crossed over to like the States or internationally for whatever reason. It doesn't look good. Now, the things that really sort of like don't work, and that's just stuff that maybe we had to look at on a really global level, is that just the mere allegations, you lose everything. So if you're a man, the mere allegations, you're going to lose everything. They don't need to be substantiated, which is crazy. They don't need to be proven. So that part, that's not really cool. So on the surface, the story is about Neil Gaiman, and the story is about sexual harassment, or the story is about rape, or the story is about sexual impropriety. But that's not really the story. The real story is about a cult member who was born into a cult. And what happened to him as a kid, not really clear. Not necessarily good things. And that's the real story. So what's the official story? So the official story, according to AP, is as follows. One of Neil Gaiman's publishers has dropped him as the British author faces multiple allegations of sexual assault and harassment, and his name is not on the website of the agency, which has for years handled his speaking appearances. Dark Horse Comics announced on Twitter last weekend that it would no longer release its illustrated series based on Gaiman's novel Anansi Boys. The 7th of 8 planned editions came out earlier this month. Dark Horse takes seriously the allegations against Neil Gaiman, and we are no longer publishing his works, reads a statement from Dark Horse, which still includes Gaiman's books on its website. Allegations against Gaiman, known for such bestsellers as Coraline and the Sandman series, first emerged last summer on a Tortoise Media podcast. After a lengthy New York Magazine article in January included allegations from 8 women of assault, abuse, and coercion, Gaiman responded with a blog post denying any wrongdoing. Like most of us, I'm learning, and I'm trying to do the work needed. And I know that that's not an overnight process, he wrote. At the same time, as I reflect on my past, and as I review everything that actually happened, as opposed to what is being alleged, I don't accept there was any abuse. Gaiman's office and his literary agent did not immediately respond to requests for comment Monday. Gaiman has worked with numerous publishers over the years. 2 of them, HarperCollins and W.W. Norton, have said that they have no plans to release his books in the future. Others, including Bloomsbury, have so far declined comment. Gaiman still lists the Stephen Barclay Agency on his website as a contact for personal appearances, but his name doesn't appear on the agency's client list. Barclay did not immediately respond to a request for comment. And Disney has paused a planned adaptation of Gaiman's The Graveyard book, while Netflix is still scheduled to release a 2nd season based on The Sandman. And then since this article was published, an update, Netflix has canceled The Sandman.
One woman saying, I've got a question, can I have your email address? Sent to my email address, nothing happened. A week later, I got the long email making accusations against Neil Gaiman that led to the creation of this podcast.
So what's the connection to Jonestown? Well, I think the connection is really just the whole CULT thing, the cult thing.
Told I have big cruise director energy. No clipboard today. I was also in a cult for 12 years. And I'm here today to protect you all from the same shit show that I went through. With a seemingly altruistic mission to change the world one person at a time. Big red flag.
I think the whole thing is just a confidence trick.
And I truly found an incredible community of like-minded humanitarians and a place where I could help people set and achieve goals and bust through their limiting beliefs. It was wonderful. But it was also a facade for something sinister.
And I wasn't allowed in the local school.
Something that would take over my life slowly over a decade with a slow build of coercion, obligation, gaslighting, and control. It wasn't just a highly toxic workplace. This was a high-control group, AKA a cult.
Do you really think that they're trying to take over the world?
Just remember that all of these programs and communities and tools and answers and all